What is up, everybody? Happy Friday. Welcome into an all-new episode of the Pack a Day Podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Of course, you can follow the podcast at Pack a Day Podcast. Today, I'm going to be talking about what is, I don't think it's like a hot button issue, but I think it's a really interesting issue or an interesting question to ask at least. And that is, the Packers have seemed to want to cross-train a lot of their players. And versatility is really sort of one of their key tenets, one of their keys to success. But one of the things I was thinking about the other day, just spending my time aimlessly thinking about Packers things as I am off to do, and then I was also asked about it in a recent members-only Q&A, so I figured maybe today we could expound upon it a little bit. And that question is, are the Packers maybe doing too much cross-training? And are they not allowing players to get really good at maybe one specific position? Are they focusing too much on versatility, too much on moving people around to different spots, and not enough on mastery, not enough on technique at, again, that one spot where they could be really good in one specific position? And I thought that would be sort of an interesting topic to dive into because I think there is some merit to the question. We saw Jordan Morgan specifically, I think, struggle a little bit in OTAs and mini camps and in rookie mini camps. We saw, just some rookie stuff. I want to be 1,000,000% clear here, as I've been in the past. We have no idea what any of these rookies are going to be. Through OTAs, mini camps, rookie mini camps, we have gotten the smallest of glimpses at all of these guys. I think some of the guys that have stood out have been Edgerrin Cooper and Marshawn Lloyd. They could easily be players that once the pads come on, maybe that speed doesn't translate quite as much. Maybe they don't look as dynamic. And there are going to be other players, specifically a lot of times offensive linemen, maybe guys like Jordan Morgan, Monk, and Travis Glover, those guys probably are going to look a lot better when the pads do come on. So we don't need to jump to any conclusions here, but it did seem like at times that Jordan Morgan was struggling, just having multiple false starts, getting beat by some players. And you had to kind of wonder, hey, instead of maybe putting this rookie who's only played left tackle in college at 4 different spots in a very short period of time, would it be better to just put him at one spot or maybe 2 spots and have him focus on that a little bit more and maybe try to master that rather than doing all these different movements around the offensive line? So I wanted to dig into that a little bit further today. The first thing I wanted to kind of go over here is that the Packers haven't been entirely consistent with this, even over the course of the past couple of years. For example, just last year in 2023, it very much felt like the Packers did want to give a more focused approach to a lot of their rookies. Karl Brooks is a great example of this. Karl Brooks is somebody who played nose tackle, defensive end, stand-up outside linebacker. He did a billion different things at Bowling Green. Like, he was in a different spot, like in every single play, it felt like. A lot of people thought, myself included, that once Green Bay got him, that maybe he could be somebody that did a little bit of standing up as a 3-4 outside linebacker, especially on rundowns. Maybe he could be a 3 technique. Maybe you could use him in a variety of different ways. Nope. They just basically played him as a specific pass rushing defensive tackle, more as like a 3 technique type. Like that's how they used him. They didn't really do anything else with him. They kind of had to master that one thing first. LVN, first round pick. A lot of us thought, myself included, this could be somebody that they put a lot on the inside, stood up on the outside, and we could see him in a variety of different positions, maybe even doing some of the Preston Smith stuff where he lined up over center and did some pass rushing in that way. For the most part, we saw LVN just as a stand-up outside linebacker. We saw a little bit with his hand in the dirt. We saw a little bit of versatility from him, but for the most part, they had him focus on one specific thing. Carrington Valentine. This is another player that maybe could have been used in the slot more or tried to do a few different things. Nope. They focused him solely as an outside cornerback. And Quay Walker, going back a couple years, that's another player who we thought maybe would be somebody that could even stand up on the outside and maybe do a little bit more pass rushing. And they basically used him entirely as an off-ball linebacker. They have not gone the route of diversifying those players, at least as of yet, at least not this past year or Quay Walker the year before that as rookies. They honed them in and focused them in on specific spots and had them try to sort of master those positions first. In 2024, it's already been a completely different sort of mentality when it's come to these rookies. Javon Bullard. One of the noteworthy things from Javon Bullard is that he has not only played safety, but he has also played in the slot. And this is somebody that I thought would be the classic Green Bay Packer. Like they have him learn safety first. Let's not put too much on his plate. Let's not have him go in the slot. Let's just have him play safety. And then we can sort of give him more as time goes on. Now, maybe Bullard's just handling it amazing, which could be great. That's awesome. But they have had him as a box safety, as a post safety in the slot. They've had him doing everything, which is a great sign, but it's been interesting. They haven't focused him in on one thing. Jordan Morgan, we just talked about. I thought there was a good chance that they would have him maybe try something specific first, but nope. Left tackle, left guard, right tackle. We've seen him at 4 different spots. Evan Williams, same thing as Javon Bullard. We've seen him in the box. We've seen him as a post safety, too high safety. We've seen him as a slot guy. We've seen him used in a little bit of every sort of way. Jacob Monk and Travis Glover are likely to see multiple positions. I think Monk did. I'd have to really think. I tried to think back on it, and I couldn't remember specifically if he ever got time at guard. I know he was at center. My guess is he got some time at guard as well. And my guess is Travis Glover got time on the left side and the right side. I can't confirm that 1,000%, just based off of my memory, but I'm pretty sure that those guys saw some different positions as well. Or if not, they're probably going to come training camp. So Green Bay, again, has not been entirely consistent over the course of the past few seasons with how they've handled these rookies and cross-training some players and others just trying to focus them in and have them do one specific thing. And to be fair, this could be extremely player specific, and this could be extremely position specific. We could see that they feel maybe more comfortable with safeties doing some of the slot and different safety type of roles. And it could just be part of the general job description that you're going to have to do all that stuff. That's just safety for them. Offensive line, clearly, we know best 5 guys, they're going to cross-train all those guys. Maybe with LVN and Carl Brooks and some of those guys. Even Colby Wooden last year, we basically saw only as a defensive tackle. That was another player we thought maybe would be a defensive end, which they're now cross-training him on. But last year, as a rookie, they did not do that. So these are all different things that are very unique. Like I said, maybe it's position specific, maybe it's player specific, but it hasn't been the same for everyone. The next is I want to look at some of the advantages and the disadvantages of how Green Bay is doing it. The first advantage, and we should point out here that this is OTAs and minicamp. This is not training camp. This is not preseason. This is not game day practices or like the week of practices getting ready for the week, right? Ready for an actual regular season game. This is sort of the time that you should be trying some different stuff, and we should note that at least here. But one of the things that this affords you the opportunity of, let's just kind of take Jordan Morgan as a perfect case study here. One of the things that this allows you to do, number one, is to give you an opportunity to see maybe where he looks best. Sometimes you might have an idea of a player from scouting him coming out of college of where you want him to be. You've seen him do left tackle in college, and you can maybe project him at a certain spot. But sometimes, until you actually see them in a different position, it can be hard to visualize for some people what that might look like or just see what they can do at a given spot. You might think Jordan Morgan left tackle all day, every day, and then you see him at right guard and you're like, holy crap, he looks incredible at right guard. And if you never tried it, you might not ever know that. So just giving him an opportunity to show what he can do at different spots, you might get a great idea for like, oh my goodness, I didn't think he was going to be able to play X, Y, or Z spot. And he looks phenomenal at that spot. And then the exact opposite is true as well. You might think that Jordan Morgan has the ability to play 4 different positions. We talked about it all during the draft process. He only played left tackle in college, but projection-wise, he projected as somebody who could play 4 different positions. What could happen is you could just keep him at left tackle. You could get into a pinch when the season starts and be like, oh, our right guard went down. We need a right guard. Jordan projects as a good right guard. Let's put him there. And he just gets annihilated. And if you didn't test that out in OTAs and minicamps and maybe a couple preseason snaps here and there to see that, oh my goodness, he can't play right guard, then you end up in a situation where maybe you're letting your team down because you didn't test that out ahead of time. So it gives you the opportunity to see what positions players can play and maybe what positions players cannot play and test that out a little bit more. Next is it keeps players versatile. It truly allows you to get your best 11 guys on the field. When roster building and when you're putting together a team, it's not always going to be this perfect puzzle. It's not always going to be we can have everything that we want exactly the right way. You have to be creative. And you have to find ways to maximize the talented players that you have on your team and minimize the spots where you have weaknesses. And a lot of the ways that you can do that is by having players be versatile and play in different spots or be creative with those players that you do have. And we hear all the time, it's, Matt LaFleur could basically just like hit a play button on a recorder of like, we want our best 5 guys out there. We know they want their best 5 guys out there. So if you're going to do that, you better have guys cross-trained at different positions. And in a lot of ways, that does make sense. If you have, 5 guys that are great, but they're all center, left guard, or left tackle, well, let's train 2 of those guys to play right guard or right tackle so that we can get those best 5 guys out there. Otherwise, we might have our 5 best guys, 2 of them on the bench and 2 guys that can't play as well playing right guard and right tackle because we just played those guys at the left side and that's all they can do. So you don't necessarily want to end up in that situation either. So it does give you a lot more versatility and it does allow you to get your best 11 guys on the field at all times, or at least closer to it. It helps you cover for injuries throughout the course of the season. I just recently told a story, and I've told in the past of how Brian Gutekunst has viewed that linebacker position, of how like, hey, if one of these guys goes down, the next guy that steps up has to be able to do everything. They need to be able to play the run. They need to be able to play the pass. They need to be able to do a little bit of everything. If we just have a specialist that comes in that's just a run-stopping specialist, and he can't cover, and now all of a sudden he has to play every down, that's going to be a problem. So it does allow you to have these guys that can cover for injuries. If you do have, for example, a couple right guard, you have Sean Ryan go down, you have Elton Jenkins go down, for example. Well, you could theoretically, because of your cross training, have Zach Tom going at guard. You could have Jordan Morgan going at guard. You could have Jacob Monk going at guard, where if you just kept Zach Tom at right tackle, Jordan Morgan at left tackle, and Jacob Monk at center, now those guys are not ready to go in at guard, and now you're probably stuck with Royce Newman and Donovan Jennings or something like that. It doesn't work out as well. You don't get your best 5 guys out there because you didn't cross-train them in the first place. So it does allow you to cover for injuries throughout the course of the season. Defensively, we can't use Jordan Morgan on this one, but sometimes it allows you to disguise things better. If you have safeties, for example, and Xavier McKinney and Javon Bullard, that can do everything, that can play the slot, that can play box safety, that can play post safety. You might show Javon Bullard as a box safety. You might show Xavier McKinney as a post safety, but as soon as the ball snapped, you might see Xavier McKinney race up to become the box safety. You might see Javon Bullard race back to become the post safety. Those sort of things happen all the time. You could see Javon Bullard as the box safety, Xavier McKinney as the post safety, Keyshawn Nixon come on a blitz from the nickel spot, and all of a sudden, Javon Bullard becomes the nickel guy, becomes the slot guy, and covers that wide receiver who's ever in the slot in that position. And that disguises your blitz better from Keyshawn Nixon. There's a variety of different things you can do. You could have Javon Bullard line up as the slot guy, and he could end up playing safety from it. We saw a little bit of that from Charles Woodson back in the day. So there are so many different things that you can do because these guys are cross-trained and can do a variety of different things, that it does allow you to disguise things and, again, be more creative on both sides of the ball. Wide receivers the same. If you have these wide receivers that, Christian Watson can only play on the outside, and Jaden Reed can only play in the slot, and Dontavian Wicks can only do this, it's going to be a tell. If Malik Heath only comes in as a blocker, as a run blocker, every time he's in the game, they're going to be like, all right, it's going to be a run because Malik Heath's in the game. You want to cross-train these guys to be able to do different things. So you're not putting tells out there of exactly what you're going to do down in and down out just based on your personnel packages or who's out on the field. So that's going to be another important one, is it does allow you to disguise things better. And again, just maybe not have it be a tell quite as much. It could give you more unique combinations of players to throw at opposing offenses and defenses, and it could keep teams guessing a little bit more. Meaning, you might be able to put 5, this is probably a little bit over aggressive, but like 5 linebackers on the field at the same time and do a variety of different things. You might be able to put 3 safeties on the field. You might be able to do a variety of different, matchups and mix-ups of the players that you have, because guys can do different things. For example, a lot of the players that they picked up this offseason, Xavier McKinney, Javon Bullard, Edgerrin Cooper, Tyron Hopper, Katano Ladapo, Evan Williams, they're good blitzers. They can all blitz. So like you could get these guys coming closer to the line of scrimmage. You could have any of these guys blitz from any different angles and any different spots. Like that could be something that you utilize a little bit more. And because they can play different positions and do different things, that again can allow you to be a lot more creative and just throw wrinkles at teams. Same thing with all the weapons that the Packers have at running back, wide receiver, and tight end. Because they can move all the way around and because they are versatile, it gives you more things to throw at opposing defenses. And lastly, versatility from a player's standpoint. You might say, hey, I'd rather just master something. But let's take a look at a Colby Wooden, for example. Colby Wooden's a phenomenal example of this overall. Now, he's a 4th-round pick from last year, so he probably has a really good chance to make the team almost just in and of itself because he's a 4th-round pick from a year ago. But this is a player who is no closer than number 5 on the defensive tackle depth chart. He's not going to get ahead of Carl Brooks. He's not going to get ahead of Devontae Wyatt, TJ Slayton, or Kenny Clark. He's going to be 5th. And if all of a sudden Jonathan Ford or one of these undrafted guys, or they sign somebody unexpectedly, whatever it might be, shows out and they don't want to keep 6 defensive tackles, Colby Wooden's kind of the next guy out. And Colby Wooden could be battling for a roster spot. Let's say they want to keep 9 total defensive linemen, right? So including defensive ends and defensive tackles. We just named the 4 defensive tackles who are locks basically to make the team. And then you've got LVN, Enagbare, Preston Smith, and Rashawn Gary. That's 8. That number 9 spot, again, if they only wanted to keep 9, that number 9 spot comes down to probably Brenton Cox or Colby Wooden. And the fact that Colby Wooden can play defensive end, like Brenton Cox can, but can also play defensive tackle, which Brenton Cox can't, that can be a differentiator. So if you are a player, especially a fringe roster player, that shows that you can do a variety of different things and play multiple positions, that gives you more opportunity to make the team. So some players might say, hey, I'd rather just master this one thing so I can be better at it. Others might say, hey, yeah, give me as much as you can because that's going to make me more valuable, not only to potentially make the roster, but also to get active on game days. If you are on that, again, fringe, if you're like somewhere between the 47th and the 53rd player on the bottom of the roster and everyone's healthy, which hardly ever happens. But if that's the case, remember, only 48 guys active on game day. Let's say Keyshawn Nixon wasn't a starting corner, right? And maybe wasn't the best kick returner in football. He was just a good kick returner and like a number 5 corner. Well, that might not necessarily get you active on game days in and of itself. But the fact that he can be your kick returner, can be your punt returner, can be a corner in a pinch, you can use him on offense, you can use him as a jammer, you can use him as a gunner, you can use him on kick coverage. Like the fact that he can do everything, that's going to give him a lot more chance, a much larger chance to be active on game days because he can do a variety of different things for you. So the versatility can be key for players as well. But of course, there are disadvantages as well, and it's worth noting those. First of all, it is tougher to master multiple positions. I think it was Josh Sitton, maybe it was TJ Lang. I think it was Josh Sitton who equated moving from left guard to right guard or right guard to left guard, whatever it was, to wiping your you-know-what with your opposite hand, with the hand, your non-dominant hand. So he's like saying like, hey, this is not Madden. This is not, you can go into player management and click X on the player and go down and change their position from left guard to right guard. And you know what? They stayed from an 85 at left guard and now they're an 85 at right guard. Or again, you moved them to right tackle or center and left tackle. And maybe there was one, overall that it moved up or down based on that move to a different spot, but they can just move in there and they play the same as they did from an overall standpoint as they did at any of the other spots. It's not just like that. It is tough to go from position to position. And let's take Sean Ryan in this example. It's great that Sean Ryan will probably be able to go in at left guard, center, which they've cross-trained him at this offseason, and right guard in a pinch. But there's an argument to be made that, hey, maybe Sean Ryan just would have been best just learning right guard. Maybe that's a type of player where he's struggling a little bit to get all the nuances of what he needs to do just at right guard down. Let's have him just get that down. We don't need to move that guy to center and left guard yet. Maybe once he masters right guard a little bit more, now we maybe start putting a little bit more on his plate, but maybe let's just kind of keep him where he is and let's not tinker with it quite as much. And I think there could be something like that where you end up with a player that's trying to do just a bit too much, a little bit too much going on in the head, and all of a sudden you're not great at any of it, and that can kind of cost you as well. Next up is players moving around, and this is kind of an offensive line one. It can certainly cause a lack of cohesion and poor communication between players. I talked to Brian Bulaga once in the locker room about, because they were kind of moving some, I think this was actually when they were going back and forth from Lane Taylor to Elton Jenkins at left guard when Jenkins had first come in. And I kind of asked him how that affected him at left tackle, or I don't know, maybe it was a right tackle, was right guard, whatever the case may have been, because I think he was at right tackle at the time. So it's probably at right guard. But either way, they were rotating somebody next to him. And I asked him how that affected him. And he's like, yeah, there can definitely be a change of what you do and how you cover for different players and the communication. So he's like, yeah, it does cause a little bit more work for him because guys are rotating in and out at one particular position. Now imagine you're doing that at left tackle with Rasheed Walker and Yash Nyman last year. You're doing it at right guard with John Runyon Jr. and Sean Ryan. Now these guys are professionals. They need to figure that out. But I mean, it has been a sort of known thing for a while of if you can get those 5 guys that are playing together, think of your David Bakhtiari, Josh Sitton, Corey Linsley, TJ Lang, Brian Bulaga offensive line. When those 5 guys were connected and all healthy and all playing at the highest of levels, like that was a dominant offensive line that they basically had their way with opposing defenses. And a lot of it was the cohesion and the communication that they had up front and knew what each other were going to do. They knew each other's strengths. They knew each other's weaknesses. Now imagine if, while they were trying to set that, if Corey Linsley was subbing in and out with JC Treader, if Josh Sitton and TJ Lang were switching back and forth between left guard and right guard, if David Bakhtiari was rotating in with another tackle when he was a rookie, like that can cause issues again with the communication and the cohesion. And you probably don't get that comfortability that you would if you just put 5 guys out there and stick with them. That can absolutely be a disadvantage as well. Same in the secondary. There are rules that you have to follow. There are, keys in communication that you have to talk about with different players. And some of that over time, if you play with the same sort of players and do the same things over and over, you know what the other player is going to do. But if you're kind of moving players around constantly and players are in different spots and in different positions, and now you have to extra communicate to know what each other are going to do, that's where those breakdowns can happen in the secondary. And you end up with a receiver running, completely free, and you end up giving up a big explosive play. So that cohesion and communication definitely can be a little bit worse as well. The next is you could legitimately have players that are unhappy based on their contract because you want them to play a different position. Let's talk about Zach Tom for a second. If I were Zach Tom and the Packers came to me and said, hey, we want to make you a center. We think you can be a Hall of Fame center. I'm like, no, I'm good. I want to play right tackle. I'm going to get paid a whole lot more. Or if you want to play me at left tackle, I'll go to left tackle. But I'm going to get paid a whole lot more at tackle than I am going to be at center or even at guard. Now, guards and centers are getting paid more, but tackles are still getting paid even more than that. So if I were in that situation, I would, maybe the better person says, hey, I'll just do what's best for the team. And I hope that the team kind of just takes care of me. But I kind of want to stay at the position that's going to get paid a lot more money. You may not remember this, but Elton Jenkins had a clause in his contract that if he was eventually a starting tackle, he was going to get paid more money. And that could be a situation where when Jenkins was at right tackle for that period of time, Green Bay went to him and obviously had him move back to guard. He could have had a much bigger issue with that and said, no, I want to stay at tackle. I'm going to get paid a lot more if I stay at tackle. Now, he was struggling out there at right tackle, and I think it was smart for him to move back inside. I think it was best for everyone. But you can end up in situations where you are asking a player to basically be in a less advantageous position for their long-term financial future because of what you're asking them to do. So those things can cause some issues and can ruffle some feathers as well. That can absolutely be another disadvantage. And I do think it can be tougher on younger players as they first get into the league. I don't know how many millions of times I've talked about, I think it's super important to get rookies off to a strong start and make them comfortable and get them confident. And like I said, last year, it felt like they were trying to do that. Get LVN confident in one spot, get Carl Brooks confident in one spot, and so on and so on. And this year, it's felt like maybe with a Jordan Morgan, maybe they're trying to do a little bit too much and giving him 4 different spots in his first few weeks. And I think his head's swimming a little bit. And Matt LaFleur basically said, yeah, like mentally, he has a long ways to go. And that all the physical traits are there, but his head's swimming right now. Well, maybe just have him learn one thing and then get that down and then expand on him rather than giving him a crap ton, having him learn 4 different spots and then trying to contract it down. Maybe you have him master one or at least do really well enough at one where now you finally feel comfortable for him to learn a second spot. So there are disadvantages to this as well. Now, there are clearly players that this has been extremely helpful for in their careers and that will help the Packers in a tremendous way this year. Elton Jenkins, we know how valuable his versatility is. And maybe we're to the point now where maybe that tackle versatility isn't quite what we thought it was. The last time he was at right tackle, it did not go well at all. I still think that was more of they moved him from the left side to the right side. They moved him from guard to tackle, and he just came off a torn ACL. I think that was the trifecta. The 3 strikes, you're out. It wasn't going to work. I think if any of those things maybe weren't true, if he was healthy or if he was moving to left tackle or he got to just, whatever, right? I think it would have been a lot better. But I think the fact that you're changing positions, changing sides of the line, and you're coming off a torn ACL, I think he was just destined to fail. I still think he has a ton of versatility. I wouldn't be super excited to move him back to right tackle just based on what I saw, but I still think I feel amazingly comfortable at left guard, center, right guard, and I even think he could play some left tackle if you needed him to as well. Zach Tom, I legitimately believe has 5 position versatility along the offensive line. I think he can be good at any of those 5 spots. Xavier McKinney, clearly he is going to be somebody that is super versatile in the back end of the Packers defense. Colby Wooden, we talked about, he might have a much better opportunity to be active on game days and make the roster because he can play defensive end and defensive tackle. I think that cross-training is going to be huge for him. Corey Ballantyne, he is somebody that is now cross-training as a slot corner as well. I think that is a extra tool in his toolbox that helps him make a 53-man roster and gives him more value on that 48-man game day roster as well. I think Javon Bullard, his ability to potentially play in the slot, post safety, box safety, all of it will help this defense a ton if he can handle it. And these wide receivers, all being able to play the X, the Y, the Z, left side, right side, doesn't matter what you ask him to do. That, again, gives you a lot more options on offense with what you want to do with your play calls and moving everyone around and making it harder on a defense to tell exactly what you want to do. Though all those things I just mentioned are extremely helpful. But I do think there are some, disadvantageous situations as well. I do think Jordan Morgan is one of those. I think him trying to learn 4 positions right away coming out of college has not been advantageous for him. And I think rookies in general should probably be given a little bit more opportunity to try to excel at something or do something well first before you put a little bit too much on their plate. And I also believe that there are players on this roster right now that could be asked to do even more. LVN, I want to see him take on more. I want to see him a little bit more on the inside. I want to see him try to do some different things. I'd like to see him lined up over center on occasion. I think there's more things you can do with him. Keyshawn Nixon, I still think there's plays on offense that you could get him involved with. Now, I don't know how much you want to do that when you already have 6 wide receivers, 3 tight ends, 3 running backs that you're going to struggle to get onto the field. Keyshawn Nixon might not even be in the conversation because of all the crazy depth you have on offense, but I still think there's some things that he could potentially bring to the table. They gave him 1 play last year. I think I would like to see that maybe go to like 10 on the season, quite honestly, but I think there's even more that he can do. Jaden Reed, I would like to see Jaden Reed lined up in the backfield a little bit more. I'm not even necessarily saying that you have to Randall Cobb this thing and actually hand him the football. I'd like to see him maybe get 5 handoffs through the course of the year. I'd be cool with that. I don't think you want to do that with any sort of regularity just based on his body type. That's not going to be good for him in the short term or the long term. Meaning I just think it's going to be too much wear and tear. But could you use it, again, once every 3 games, you throw a wrinkle in and hand it off to him? Absolutely. And even if you don't hand it to him, you can play action it to him, or he can run an angle route, a Texas route out of the backfield, whatever you want. Like, there are things that you can do more with him. Carl Brooks, we talked about. I think defensive end is something that you would potentially do really well at if you gave him the opportunity. Jair Alexander, I think he can play more in the slot in obvious passing situations. I'd like to see that a little bit more. So I guess what I'm trying to say here is there are players on this roster where their versatility is so unbelievably important already to the team and maybe their individual careers. There are others, specifically rookies and Jordan Morgan, where I think maybe it needs to get scaled back a little bit. And there's others where I think, hey, let's try to give them a little bit more because I think there's more that they can bring to the team. And this is where it does become very player specific and based on where they are in their individual careers. Now, I do like how that, Matt LaFleur said things are probably going to change in training camp. And he basically said they're probably going to try to maybe tone this down a little bit and maybe specifically target more specific positions when it comes to training camp. And I'm totally cool with that. I think that makes a ton of sense. I'm excited to see how they actually go about doing that when training camp starts. I also want to add here that I really like the Packers' overall philosophy here. I did like kind of how they handled it a little bit better in 2023 of let's have them focus on one specific thing first and then put more on their plate maybe. But I do like the fact that versatility is, again, a key tenet to what they're trying to do. I would personally start rookies at a specific spot first, let them get comfortable, and then expand rather than having a rookie learn 4 positions and then try to narrow it down. I think you probably ask the rookie a little bit more and say, hey, where do you want to start? Where do you feel comfortable? And let's get you comfortable with that first and then kind of go from there. Or even if you don't go there, even if you're like, hey, we need you at right guard, we're going to put you at right guard, that's where you're going to train. That's fine too. But I think four is probably a lot. I also really like the idea of, hey, let's just test some crap out in minicamp and OTAs. We're not battling for roster spots right now. We're not trying to win any games this week. We can try some bleep. We can try some crap out. We can throw some crap at the wall and see what sticks. I'm totally cool with that. I think that does make a lot of sense. But again, I would say that I think it's better with some of these rookies to maybe not do it quite as much with them. I would like to see them be a little bit more cautious with younger players. Once training camp starts, I would like to see Jordan Morgan focused in on 2 positions. Either keep him just on the left side, meaning left tackle and left guard, or just keep him at tackle, meaning left tackle and right tackle. So, hey, maybe we're going to cross-train you just at tackle so you can go left side or right side, but we're just going to have you focus on tackle. Or we're going to say, we just are going to focus you on the left side. We're going to give you a little bit at left tackle. We're going to give you a little bit at left guard, but we want to see you focused on those specific things. So you don't have to worry about switching sides and having to do things like mirror what you're doing. We're just going to keep you on one side and have you focus on those 2 things. That's personally what I would do. Have him go left tackle and left guard. And then if you do want to get your best 5 guys on the offensive line, and that includes Jordan Morgan, but Rasheed Walker's playing great, you can still do Walker at left tackle, Morgan at left guard, and move Elton Jenkins to either center or right guard to get your best 5 guys on the offensive line overall. And then again, like with those younger players, again, once they start to master it, then expand it from there. The Packers' versatility overall has been massively beneficial, and it will help them, again, a ton in 2024. I think there's opportunities to expand with some of these players and give them more opportunities and options. And I think there's other opportunities to maybe contract it a little bit and maybe try to do a little bit less, like a Sean Ryan, like a Jordan Morgan, so that they can just get better overall at what you ultimately probably want them to do, maybe honed in on one specific position a little bit more. But last but not least, I love the creativity. I love what they're trying to accomplish. I think this is a good philosophy to have overall, but I think there's probably just a couple minor tweaks that they could make to make it even more perfect and make it even better from what they're doing already really well with this team right now. That is going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. You guys are the absolute best. I'll be right back here tomorrow with an all-new episode. But until next, wait. Shout out to Hall of Fame and All-Pro members, Most Hated Minnesotan, PJ Wynn, John Wild, Shea Bradad, Brandon Paletta, Jennifer Wright, Boom Handle, Donald Lee, Lori Lord, Baby QB, Dave McCluskey, Donald Decker, Bremen, Dan Miller, Alex Wong, Arnaldo Espinoza, and Dan Gesford. Now, I'll see you guys tomorrow, but until next time, and as always, go Pack, go.